On a bright Sunday morning in Namora City, Esther's heart swelled with anticipation for Mother's Day, unaware that before sunset, a truth so sharp would cut through years of sacrifice. She had raised her only son, Kelvin, alone since her husband's passing, pouring 17 years of love, time, and every spare dollar into his future. That morning, he arrived at her modest home with his wife, Amara, carrying a small gift bag. Esther thought nothing could ruin the warmth of the moment, until she discovered that behind Amara's smile lay a betrayal that would change everything. Amara handed her the bag with a careful smile, the kind that looked perfect for a camera but felt distant to the heart. Where are you watching from today? Kindly hit like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more. Inside the bag, Esther found a pair of navy socks with a $15 price tag still attached. She smiled politely, masking the sting in her chest, and thanked them. But later that afternoon, her world tilted when she saw a $10,000 gold watch glittering on Amara's father's wrist. Bought, as Amara boasted online, with her own money, though Esther knew exactly where it had come from. 17 months earlier, Amara had called her, voice trembling, claiming she urgently needed $10,000 for vital medical expenses. Without hesitation, Esther had wired the money, believing every word. She had no idea that the money would be used for a lavish gift to impress Amara's family. Now, staring at the watch in that photograph, her pulse pounded in her ears. The socks lay on her kitchen counter like an insult, and for the first time in years, Esther felt something shift inside her, an unshakable resolve to take back the power she had long surrendered. Amara tried to call her 17 times that evening, her voice pleading in voicemails. "Mummy, please. Don't do this." But Esther knew the path ahead left no room for regret. As the sun dipped behind the roofs of Namora City, the golden light caught the framed photograph of her late husband, David, smiling at her from the mantel. She wondered if he would approve of what she was about to do. Every sacrifice they had made, the tuition fees, the wedding expenses, the countless quiet rescues, now felt like seeds planted in barren soil. The next morning, Esther sat alone in her kitchen, the smell of lemon polish lingering in the air, a habit she'd kept since David's time. Her laptop glowed on the table as she searched for the jewelry store Amara had tagged in her social media post. Prestige Jewelers. Its polished gold letters on the screen shimmered like temptation. She printed the picture of the watch, tucked it into her handbag, and stepped out into the streets of Namora City. The morning air was crisp, each breath sharpening her resolve. She wasn't just going to confront Amara. She was going to uncover every lie her daughter-in-law had told. Namora City was already awake, its streets buzzing with the chatter of market women, the aroma of fresh bread drifting from roadside stalls, and the occasional roar of okadas weaving through traffic. Esther's feet moved quickly, the folded printout of the watch picture in her bag feeling heavier than it should. She had walked these streets for years, but today every step carried a sharper purpose. She passed the old bus terminal, memories of taking Kelvin to school flooding her mind, memories of a boy who once clung to her hand, promising he would always take care of her. That promise now felt like a cruel joke. Prestige Jewelers stood out like a palace among modest shops. Its glass doors gleamed, and gold-lettered signage reflected the morning sun. Esther hesitated for a moment, gripping her bag, then pushed the door open. Inside, cool air swept over her, carrying the faint scent of expensive perfume. A young saleswoman with perfect braids and an even more perfect smile stepped forward. "Good morning, Ma. How may I help you?" she asked politely. Esther pulled out the folded paper, her voice calm but heavy. "This watch, was it purchased here?" The saleswoman's eyes flickered for a split second before she replied, "One moment, please." Esther watched her disappear into a side office, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. The store was quiet, only the gentle ticking of a wall clock filling the space. That ticking mocked her, reminding her of all the time she had given to people who didn't value her. She glanced around. Glass cases lined with glittering necklaces, bracelets, and watches, each one carrying a price tag that could pay a year's rent in her neighborhood. Moments later, a man in a dark suit emerged from the office. His smile polite but his eyes assessing. I'm Mr. Okafor, the store manager, he said. May I? He gestured for the paper. Mr. Okafor studied the printout, then nodded slowly. Yes, ma. This is one of ours. Sold in February this year. His words felt like a hammer striking her chest. Do you remember who bought it? She asked, her voice steady though her hands trembled inside her bag. He glanced at a tablet on the counter. It was purchased by a young woman with a man beside her. The payment came from a bank card in the name Esther. He looked up. That's your name, Ma. Esther's breath caught. Yes, she said quietly. It is my name. The truth wrapped around her like cold chains. Amara had used her card, her own daughter-in-law, without permission, and Kelvin had stood by. Mr. Okafor's voice softened. Ma, the watch was worth $10,300 after tax. It was described as a gift for a family elder. Esther's lips pressed into a thin line. That family elder was Amara's father, a man who had never lifted a finger for her. She thanked Mr. Okafor, folded the printout again, and slipped it back into her bag. As she stepped out into the noisy street, the sounds of Namora City felt distant. Her mind was already moving to the next step. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. By the time Esther reached her small compound, the sun was high and the heat pressed down like a heavy hand. She set her bag on the table, poured herself a glass of water, and stared at the printout again. Amara had taken her trust and sold it for vanity. Kelvin had allowed it. The betrayal stung worse than the humid air. Her phone buzzed, Amara's name flashing on the screen. Esther watched it ring until it stopped. She wasn't ready to hear excuses. She needed a plan. She opened her laptop and logged into her bank account. Every transaction stared back at her like tiny confessions. School fees for Kelvin, rent help for Amara's younger sister, countless small transfers over the years. All her doing. And there the February charge. Prestige Jewelers. $10,300. Esther's hand hovered over the mouse before she clicked on Manage Users. Her heartbeat steadied. If they could spend her money without shame, they could live without it too. The next day, Esther walked into Citibank Namora branch, her head held high. The cool air and marble floors felt indifferent to her purpose. She approached the customer service desk where a tall man in glasses greeted her. Good morning, Ma. How can I help you? Without hesitation, she slid her ID across the desk. Remove Kelvin and Amara from all access to my accounts. Credit, debit, everything. The man looked surprised but nodded, pulling up her details. Ma, once I process this, they'll receive a notification, the banker said cautiously. I understand, Esther replied firmly. Process it. Her pen scratched across the form, sealing the decision. The banker tapped his keyboard, then handed her a printed confirmation. Esther folded it neatly and slipped it into her bag. Outside, the afternoon breeze carried the scent of roasted groundnuts from a nearby vendor. Felt like freedom. That evening, her phone erupted with calls. First Kelvin, then Amara, then both of them in rapid succession. She ignored everyone. Minutes later, a message arrived from Amara. Why are our cards declined? Fix this now. Esther smiled faintly, shaking her head. Fix this. No, she thought. This was fixing things. The house felt peaceful for the first time in weeks. The peace didn't last. The next morning, as she sipped tea by the window, her phone rang again. Kelvin's voice, sharp and demanding. Mum, what is this? Amara says you cut us off. Is this a joke? Esther's tone was calm but cold. It's no joke. You used my money to buy a $10,300 watch for her father, lied about it, and called it a medical expense. Now you can live without my help. There was silence on the line, then a muttered, It's not what you think. Esther's grip on her cup tightened. I think exactly what the receipts say, she replied. Kelvin sighed heavily. You're making a mountain out of nothing. That line landed like a slap, but it also confirmed what she already knew. He wasn't sorry. He was angry she had acted. By midday, Amara called again, her voice sugar-coated. "Mummy, we can sort this out. Please put us back on the account. We're struggling." Esther's reply was short. "You made your choices, now live with them." She ended the call before Amara could speak again. The quiet afterward was almost sweet. That night, Esther received an unexpected message from a number she didn't recognize. "Good evening, Mrs. Esther. My name is Chaik, I'm a lawyer. I hear you may need legal help. If you're free, meet me tomorrow at 9 a.m. at Zenith Chambers." She stared at the message, wondering who had sent him. But something about the timing felt like an open door, and she decided she would walk through it. The next morning, Zenith Chambers was a modest law office above a printing shop, the scent of ink and paper hanging in the air. Chaik was a slim man in his late 40s with a firm handshake and sharp eyes. "I understand your son and daughter-in-law have been using your money without permission," he said, motioning for her to sit. "Yes," Esther answered, her voice steady. "And I'm done allowing it." Chaik leaned forward, a faint smile on his lips. "Then let's make sure they can never do it again." Chaik spread a folder across his desk, the pages filled with blank forms and notes. "First, we freeze all joint accounts permanently. Then we pull bank statements for the last 3 years. Every transfer, every purchase. They all become part of your case." Esther nodded slowly. "Will this stop them from trying to take more?" Chaik's eyes glinted. "It will do more than stop them. It will show them you're not to be played with." The air in the office was still, yet Esther felt a strange sense of movement, like she was finally stepping forward after years of standing still. Chaik passed her a pen, and together they filled out forms, her signature neat and deliberate on each page. When they were done, he leaned back in his chair. "You've been generous for too long. Now we protect what's yours." His words settled over her like a shield. By afternoon, Esther was at Citibank's legal department, delivering the signed forms Chaik had prepared. The manager, a middle-aged woman with gold-rimmed glasses, scanned them quickly. "Once we process this, your son and his wife will be completely blocked. They will not be able to reverse it without your consent." Esther simply replied, "That's exactly what I want." As she left the bank, the sun blazed over Namora City's rooftops, but her steps felt lighter. She passed a market stall selling bright Ankara fabrics and remembered the dresses she used to sew for Kelvin as a boy. The memory was bittersweet, love stitched into every seam, yet now unraveled by greed. Her phone buzzed with a new message from Amara. "You'll regret this. Kelvin won't let it go." Esther read it twice, her jaw tightening. Threats wouldn't scare her anymore. If anything, they proved she was right to act. She tucked the phone back into her bag and kept walking. The following day, Chaik called. "I've gone through the first set of bank statements," he said. "There's more than just the watch. Multiple luxury store charges, hotel stays, even cash withdrawals." Esther closed her eyes briefly, the betrayal deepening. "How much are we talking?" Chaik's voice was steady. "Over $25,000 in the last year alone." The number was like a weight in her chest, yet it also fueled her resolve. "We'll need proof of every transaction," she said. Chaik chuckled softly. "Already working on it. But I also recommend we file an official complaint. That way they can't twist this into something else." Esther thought about Kelvin's likely reaction: anger, denial, manipulation, and decided she was ready. 2 days later, they sat together in the local police station, a small building with faded paint and a faint smell of dust. Officer Ease, a stocky man with a skeptical gaze, listened as Chaik laid out the evidence. "Your son and his wife are accusing you of cutting them off unfairly," Ease said, flipping through the documents. Esther met his gaze squarely. "They've been stealing from me for months. This is not unfair, it's self-defense." Officer Ease scanned the receipts, then looked back at her. "The watch alone proves misrepresentation. You said it was for medical expenses, correct?" Esther nodded. "That's what she told me. But it was for her father." Ease leaned back, exhaling. "This is serious. If they push, you could push back harder." Chike smirked faintly. That's exactly the plan. When Esther left the station, the late afternoon breeze felt cooler, calmer. She walked past children playing football in the dusty street and thought about how life had changed. She used to imagine growing old surrounded by her son's respect and care. Now she understood that respect wasn't given. It was demanded, protected, and earned. She was no longer just a mother. She was a woman reclaiming her life. The next morning, Esther sat by her kitchen window, sipping tea as the first rays of sunlight touched Namora City's rooftops. The phone on the table lit up, Kelvin's name flashing. She let it ring, but the calls kept coming. On the fourth attempt she answered. His tone was sharp. "Mom, why are you doing this? Amara's upset. We're struggling." Esther's voice was calm. "You should have thought of that before you spent $10,300 of my money on her father." Kelvin's breath hissed through the line. "It's not what you think." Esther's patience was gone. "It's exactly what the receipts say." He tried to change the subject, but she ended the call, her finger pressing the screen with finality. Moments later, a text came from Amara. "You're tearing this family apart." Esther read it once, then deleted it. A family built on lies had already torn itself apart. By midday, Chike called with news. "The police are summoning Kelvin and Amara for questioning. We'll present everything officially. They can't claim ignorance." Esther felt a mix of relief and dread. She had never wanted a public fight, but she knew this was the only way to end their control. "I'll be ready," she said, her tone firm. 3 days later, Esther arrived at the police station in a pale blue wrapper, her head tie neatly arranged. Kelvin and Amara were already there, sitting side by side. Kelvin avoided her eyes. Amara's lips pressed into a thin line. Officer Ease entered the room and placed a thick file on the table. "We've reviewed the complaint," he began. "The evidence is clear. Unauthorized spending, misrepresentation of expenses, and possible fraud." Amara shifted in her seat. "It was a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "We were going to pay her back." Esther's eyes met hers. "A misunderstanding is forgetting to return change from the market. This was theft," Kelvin muttered. "Mom, you're blowing this out of proportion." He's raised a hand. "Enough. We're not here for arguments. We're here for facts." When the meeting ended, Kelvin and Amara left without a word. Outside, Chike turned to Esther. "They're shaken. They know this won't go their way." Esther took a deep breath, feeling the weight on her shoulders ease slightly. The first battle was over, but she knew the war wasn't finished. That evening, she walked through the quiet streets of her neighborhood, the air filled with the scent of roasting maize. Children laughed nearby, chasing each other under the orange glow of the setting sun. For the first time in weeks, she felt a small spark of peace. This was the life she wanted. Simple, honest, untouched by deceit. The following morning, a new message arrived from Chike. "We should talk about your will. It's time to make sure they have no legal claim to your estate." The idea stung, but Esther knew it was necessary. She agreed to meet him at his office, determined to take the final steps to secure her future. At Zenith Chambers, Chike spread a new set of documents before her. "This will transfer your estate into a trust. The trust will ensure your assets are used according to your wishes, not theirs." Esther picked up the pen, her mind flashing through memories of Kelvin's childhood. Cutting him out felt like losing him twice, but she signed. Each signature was a quiet promise to herself. Never again. When the documents were sealed and signed, Chike smiled faintly. "It's done. They can't touch your property, your savings, or your investments." Esther stepped out into the midday sun, the air warm against her skin. For the first time in years, she felt untouchable. Kelvin and Amara might still try to hurt her, but now they would find nothing left to take. 2 weeks passed in silence, until one Saturday morning a knock echoed at Esther's front door. When she opened it, Kelvin and Amara stood on the porch. Kelvin's shirt was wrinkled, his eyes tired. Amara clutched her handbag with both hands, her usual confidence replaced by unease. "Mom, can we talk?" Kelvin asked, his voice low. Esther didn't invite them in. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her. The street was quiet, only the distant hum of traffic filling the space between them. "What do you want?" Esther's tone was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Amara's eyes glistened. "We're sorry. We made a mistake. Things have been hard since you cut us off." Esther folded her arms. "A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. What you did was a choice." Kelvin shifted uncomfortably. "We've lost a lot, Mum. Amara's father is furious. He cut off his support too. We're starting over from nothing." Esther tilted her head. "That's what happens when you build on lies. It all collapses." Amara's voice cracked. "Please give us another chance." But Esther saw the flicker in her eyes. Less remorse, more desperation. "I gave you 17 years of sacrifice, and you traded it for greed," Esther said firmly. "You used my money without my permission and lied about it. There's no going back to how things were." Kelvin's shoulders slumped, his gaze falling to the ground. Amara's lips tightened, but she said nothing. When Esther turned toward the door, Kelvin spoke again. "What if we worked to earn it back? What if we proved ourselves?" She paused, her hand on the doorknob. "Then start proving it, but don't expect me to make it easy." Without waiting for a reply, she stepped inside, the latch clicking shut behind her. Inside, the living room felt warmer, safer. The stopped clock on the mantel caught her eye, its hands frozen at a time she'd once thought was the happiest of her life. She realized now that happiness wasn't in the past. It was something she could create again on her own terms. That afternoon, she met Chaik at a small cafe near the park. The air smelled of fresh coffee and pastries, the murmur of conversations blending with soft high-life music. "They came to see me," she said as they sat. Chaik raised an eyebrow. "And?" Esther smiled faintly. "I told them the truth. They'll have to live with their choices." From her bag, she pulled an envelope and slid it across the table. "This is the check from selling that watch. I want it donated to the Children's Education Fund here in Namora City." Chaik's face lit up. "That's generous." Esther shrugged. "Better it helps children who still have a chance to grow with values than sit in my account as a reminder of betrayal." Later, Esther walked through the park, the late afternoon sun painting the sky in gold and amber. Children's laughter carried on the breeze, and she stopped to watch a group chasing a ball across the grass. For the first time in years, she felt light, unburdened. She had taken back her life, not through revenge, but through boundaries and purpose. As she left the park, the sound of the clock tower chimed in the distance. Each note felt like a heartbeat, steady and strong. Esther knew Kelvin and Amara's story with her wasn't over, but whatever came next, she would meet it with clear eyes and a steady heart. She was no longer the woman they could manipulate. She was the woman who chose peace over chaos, dignity over dependency. And in that choice, she had found her freedom.